was told Mark Monday for the 11th, but that is a little ambitious, so, but by next week for sure. Yeah. I'm sorry.
I was here.
No, that's good. We're not expecting sooner.
Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order.
I'd be pleased to.
I pledge allegiance to the flag to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We might have a moment of silence for our first responders and our military who serve us and protect us each day, for those that have had injury and loss, and for those that have given the ultimate. Let's put them in our thoughts today and appreciate. Thank you.
I'd like to announce that this meeting is being live streamed. And Chairman's report. Mike Holmes, a Public Works Equipment Operator and volunteer firefighter in the Goshen and West Whiteland Fire Companies, was awarded the 2019 William Pop Winters Award by the Chester County Commissioners on October 1st, 2019, for his heroic act of courage in rescuing a woman from a house fire in Euclid Township in October 2018. Nice.
How are we gonna recognize it?
We just did, and we did post something on the website, but we didn't get any award today. So,
There it is, right there.
Cool.
apparently, the lady did not want to leave the house, even though the first floor was on fire. But my kid, his associate, said she had to leave, and they took her out. I would add that next week is National Firefighter Week, Fire Awareness Week, so fire companies are looking for volunteers. Even if you don't put out fires, but you can do administrative work, they're still looking for help.
You know what, Ricky, that, I know we're not meeting this.
All right, the board will hold a public informational meeting on October 22nd, 2019 to present the proposed ordinance amendments for the Paoli Pike Corridor and solicit comments from the township residents. The information is posted on the township website. This will be an informational meeting. We are looking to get public comment.
And we sent out letters to everybody within 1,000 feet of the properties that are impacted.
Oh, terrific. Good.
Have you got much any feedback?
Yes, we have received a letter from Chester County, but the Chester County Planning Commission, and that is going to be on the agenda for the Planning Commission meeting tomorrow night.
Was that letter in the planning commission packet? I haven't had a chance to look at that. Thank you.
The board will announce its decision on the CZ Woodworking conditional use application at its meeting on November 12th, 2019. And last,
Wait a minute, that's conditional upon current nutrition. That's good stuff to look at.
what? Well, she said we'll have it
She
by next week.
represented, I believe it.
That's not until November 12th. I think we're
6
pretty
weeks
safe.
away.
Yeah.
It's gonna be close.
We'll be pretty, we'll do that.
Yeah.
And last but not least, Adam Kraut has resigned from the zoning hearing board. He is going to be moving out of the township. So we need to,
We'll post the appropriate act.
and send him a letter thanking
Yes.
him for his service.
We should get some good candidates for that.
The last time we went through this, there was, it must have been at least six people that were interviewed for that position. I was open at the time. Why don't we just didn't out what we had?
I think we should do that, but there may be other people who might want to
Oh,
be
that's
added to it.
right.
But yes, I agree that we probably should contact the people
Perfect. That's what I was gonna
who were not accepted and let them know that they're, find out if there's, but I would also like to invite anybody else who,
Well, that's all right, but I think the ones that we did before you did.
Well, at least, as Jenna said, I think that's smart to remind them if they didn't see it, and give them a shot. Good.
Absolutely. Okay, we'll now have public comment on non-agenda items. Seeing none, we will move on. Approval of minutes and the treasurer's report.
I do have no I have
No comments on the minutes. I'll be pleased to make a motion to accept those. Janet, I'm not even sure, you usually make comments. I'm not sure I saw
I
them.
made one correction.
I
It
thought that's what it
was a
Right.
spelling thing, nothing of any.
I got that.
Did you? Okay, is there a second?
Okay, and that's for the minutes of September 17th, 19, and September 19th of 2019.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any comment from the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion is approved. We have a treasurer's report. Anybody have
I have no questions.
no questions? How about you, Mike?
on the no, I do not.
And can we have a motion?
And Madam Chairman, I move we graciously accept the receipts and approve the expenditures as submitted to us in the treasurer's report and the accompanying materials.
Is there a
Yes,
second?
and I'll second that.
Any comments? Comments from the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is passed.
Thank you, John.
Okay, we now get to our public hearings, and I will bring us over to Ryan Jennings, our solicitor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening we have two public hearings, so let's open the record for the first. This is part of a regularly advertised public meeting to consider the adoption of the township's zoning ordinance as amended. The title and summary of the proposed zoning ordinance amendment is as follows. Bear with me because this is a long one. An ordinance amending the East Goshen Township zoning ordinance of 1997 as amended, section 240-6, to add definitions of business incubator and light industry to provide for business incubator uses by conditional use in the I-1, I-2, and BP zoning districts, as well as associated provisions contained in section 240-31C3, which provide criteria for a business incubator use. So by way of introduction and summary, as the title suggests, the business incubator use will be permitted, if approved by the supervisors, in the township's I-1, I-2, and BP, which is the business park zoning districts. Parking requirements associated with the incubator use would remain unchanged. As most of us know, the incubator concept allows for buildings, or more commonly portions thereof, to share office, light industrial, and/or manufacturing spaces within common facilities, with the objective of propelling developing startup businesses into profitable enterprises. There are a few safeguards in place with this ordinance amendment, whereby any potential use would require permitting for reoccupancy and changes of use. And the use itself does not permit outside storage of materials, equipment, or products. So the incubator use will be pretty innocuous. That's the objective. By way of hearing exhibits, I'd like to introduce and move for the admission of 6 exhibits related to this zoning ordinance amendment. Namely B1, proof of publication in the daily local news, twice because it's a zoning amendment, on September 16th and 23rd, 2019. Exhibit B2, a letter dated September 19th, 2019 to the Chester County Law Library, providing the proposed ordinance for public inspection. Exhibit B3, another letter of the same date to the daily local news, providing the proposed ordinance amendment for public inspection. Exhibit B4, Chester County Planning Commission review letter dated February 9th, 2019. Exhibit B5 is the same but more recent, dated May 21st, 2019. And lastly, Exhibit B6 is an East Goshen Township Planning Commission meeting minutes dated August 7th of 2019. With that introduction and the exhibits, I'd ask if there are any comments or questions from members of the board.
I have none, but we have to make a motion to amend the township zoning ordinance consistent with the information that you provided in your summary.
I'll second that and appreciate the work that's been done to get it to this point.
Are there any questions from members of the audience? Hearing none?
All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
Thank you.
well done.
We'll close the record on that public hearing and turn to our second of two public hearings. This one is not a zoning ordinance amendment, but it is an ordinance amendment no less. The title and summary is as follows. An ordinance amending the East Goshen Township Stormwater Management Ordinance, which is codified at Chapter 195 of the East Goshen Township Code, specifically sections 195.14 to define a high tunnel, and section 195-6C to exempt certain high tunnel facilities from the requirements of the ordinance. So by way of background for this proposed ordinance amendment, it provides just a very minor change to the township's existing stormwater management ordinance. Years ago, as required by PA Act 167, all Chester County municipalities adopted the model stormwater ordinance that was included within the county-wide plan. Last year, in April of 2018, the Pennsylvania General Assembly passed an act, Act 15 of 2018, amending Act 167, which now requires municipalities to further amend their stormwater management ordinances to provide this exemption, specifically again regarding high tunnels, which are used for agricultural operations. So in August of this year, the Chester County Water Resources Authority contacted municipalities and requested the ordinance amendment. So that is exactly what is before the board this evening. By way of hearing exhibits, there are just three, namely Exhibit B1, a proof of publication in the Daily Local News on September 23rd, 2019. Exhibit B2, a letter dated September 19th, 2019 to the Chester County Law Library, providing the ordinance amendment for public inspection. And Exhibit B3, a letter dated September 19th, 2019 to the Daily Local News, providing the same. At this time, I'd ask if there are any questions or comments from members of the board.
And I'll make a motion that we amend the ordinance as with the in the stormwater management ordinance with the information that you outlined in your preface.
And I'll second that motion.
Before the supervisors vote, are there any questions or comments from members of the public? Hearing none,
All in favor?
Aye.
thank you.
Is, Rick, is it fair to say that, of course, this process we wanted to go through being in compliance, but this is related to agriculture and particular structures exemptions. Are there any applicable locations in our township where this could apply? I mean, we have the Hicks property, but I don't know what kind of.
We probably have a couple forms over 10 acres that would apply to, but I'm not aware of any surveys or deeds to pull out.
Just curious.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sure. May I be excused?
You may be.
Yes.
This was short.
Brian, thank you. Of course, thank you all. Thank you, Kara.
Better than hearings.
Take care, Ren.
All
Oh,
right,
yes.
drive safely, you guys.
All right, we have no old business. We go to new business. We're gonna consider a recommendation to request an extension for the Chester County Municipal Grant for segments F and G of the Paoli Pike Trail.
The county gave us some money for the segment in the park. We thought we would be done by now. The agreement runs out October 10th. So if we give them an extension, we'll get through April. And I think it's either $50,000 or $150,000, I forget which.
$100,000 from the county.
Yep, this is important administrative processing to ensure that we get those dollars. So, thank you, Rick, for this motion. Madam Chair, I move that the board approve and sign the Chester County Municipal Grant Program contract amendment extending the contract termination date through April 21st of 2020.
Second.
Any comments from the board? Any comments from the audience? All in favor? Aye. Motion is passed. We now move to any other matter. And hey,
We have one issue. On one of the stipulated orders with Sunoco DEP, bottom line is if an inadvertent return occurs on an HTD for one pipeline, and then Sunoco intends to come back and install a second pipeline within that same right of way, we have to do a reevaluation to determine whether or not the HTD process is still appropriate. So the segment in question, and Nate referred to as Elreach Drive to North Chester Road. And for those of you who remember, it's the old driveway that went back into the Bowtree Farm, which is roughly midway between, I want to say, Bowtree Drive and I guess where Elreach Drive comes down. From that point there, north to the New Ked Triangle, the site up there. So they did have two small inadvertent returns when that run during the initial installation of the first pipe. So we're now going through the reevaluation process. It was posted on the DEP website. The pipeline task force talked about it and suggested that the board may want to consider sending some comments off to DEP. One of the members, Christina, provided me with her comments. I took them and crafted up some comments that are before the board. So I suggested the board send. The first one deals with the fact that both inadvertent returns occurred when the pipe was entering and exiting the ground. And as you know, they start drilling down until they get to solid bedrock. That's the greatest potential. What I've suggested is that perhaps they should drill from both ends and install a sleeve by directional boring down the bedrock. And that way they can start their HTD, they'll be in the sleeve, so it will minimize the chance of inadvertent return. The second issue was they talked about an alternative analysis, and they note that there's a transcontinental pipeline transcontinental west of the site, another one east of the site. I guess they forgot that there's an interstate energy pipeline right next door. And the suggestion I had made was that perhaps they could, from New Kent site, either conventional bore, directional drill, or open cut across 352. It would then be in that construction area, and then they could open cut the pipe and put it in, and we eliminate any risk of eventual return. So there is summary of my two comments to DEP.
I know, Rick, and thanks for that work. Christina, I think you might want to make some comment. Am I mistaken, or before you do that, I wanted to thank the Pipeline Task Force, Christina in particular. Your intelligence, your incising interest, and review of these technical documents is really appreciated. I read the report. I didn't study it. You've looked at the details very carefully. The citizens should really appreciate the strength of the residents who serve on groups like the Pipeline Task Force. Judy is here as well. These are fine details that are all part of our interest in ensuring that this process is done properly for the long-term value of safety to our residents. So Christine, I really want to thank you for this, and I think we're going to have some support. Of course, there's unanimous support, as I'm going to be presumptuous, but with the timeliness of this for October 4th, Rick and your coordination. I think that's terrific to get it done as quickly as we have. So thank you.
Would you like to talk?
So,
Start turning on, there's a solution.
there, button.
Thank you. Mike, thank you. I appreciate the comments that you made. I don't know if everybody's had a chance to read the document that that I sent around. Those are the comments that I do plan to submit to the DEP. I was just reading the document that Rick put together. And you're right that the goal is to get the pilot borehole down into competent bedrock. And I think that part of the problem is that the bore samples that that Sunoco had submitted never penetrated down to what was considered competent bedrock. And so that's what the DEP had been pushing back against in their responses to Sunoco. I think that the heart of the problem really is the GES reports. They're under the cover of GES, but we know that they are done by two previous contractors, Tetra Tech and Terracon, who are no longer even involved in the project anymore. And GES simply summarizes the findings, the field studies that were done by these two previous contractors. GES is very clear in separating themselves from having done the actual work. And so I think that one of the comments that I think would be very helpful is to ask, why has GES not actually gone back and redone the work? Because when you look at the comments from DEP, they keep saying, particularly, and I do keep pointing back to Bowtree Strasburg, because if you look at that particular drill site, you actually have a year's worth of data to look at. Starting in January of 2018 all the way through December of 2018, you see correspondence back and forth between Sunoco and the DEP. And the DEP has continuously pushed back on Sunoco, saying the samples that you're submitting are not sufficient. They haven't gone down to competent bedrock. You need to be doing more extensive studies of this area. Sunoco comes back and says, no, we have more than enough information, we feel. And then for some reason, Sunoco does miraculously agree to do more extensive studies, but those studies are never done. That was the essence of it. So now we're looking at a drill site that's literally adjacent to Bowtree Strasburg. It bumps up right next to it. I'm guessing that the geology is probably pretty similar. And so we want to apply what we've learned from Bowtree to Eldridge. And so what we want to do is we want to ask those same questions that the DEP was asking. We want to ask for those same studies that the DEP had been asking for, but were never done. And again, what Rick was saying is that it does have to get down to competent bedrock, but first we have to figure out where that is. And so more studies do need to be done. And my point and what I was going to ask in my comments is that we need to challenge these studies. We just need to outright challenge them. And particularly when you look at Eldridge, and I think I've spent probably 6 hours going through all of the reports there. When you really look at the reports that Sunoco has submitted, one of the bore sites wasn't even in the Eldridge drill site. It's north of Paoli Pike. So what I'm asking outright, first of all, is that that one should be thrown out immediately. And then the other ones, when you look in their notes, they clearly say that the core sample couldn't be taken past 30 feet because the core hole collapsed at 30 feet. So again, I think that they're really just not getting down deep enough. And I'm not a geologist, but I have spent a lot of time reading through these, and Mr. Reminger is not a geologist either, and he's the one that's writing these reports. So there is a lot to be taken from it. That's why my document was so extensive. And then you probably noticed that I actually pulled from an old East Goshen report that showed that we have two 100-year floodplains in the township, and that this pipeline roughly goes like right in between those two. I did some research on what happens in 100-year floodplains. That was not accounted for in his adjacent feature analysis. So I wanted to extract that out and talk a little bit more about that, because it clearly says in my research that 100-year floodplains come with a whole risk of hazards of their own to property, life, all that kind of stuff. And when you're developing infrastructure in 100-year floodplains, you have to take certain steps to mitigate those hazards. And he didn't even talk about those. So I think that there's a lot to be said about it. I think that the comments that the township would submit, these two are very good ones, especially the reroute analysis. I think that that could also fall under the adjacent feature section. But I don't know, do you want to go further in your comments?
Well, Christina.
There's a lot more places that you can go as the
Oh,
township.
sure. Are there, with what Rick has put together in your sharing of information, are there additional comments that you want to include with this letter to supplement this, or is this good from the township? Are you gonna be submitting comments yourself?
Yeah, so
as a
my
citizen?
comments are gonna be the 4-page document.
Okay, so you're, okay.
I'm gonna submit that, but I think that, at least coming from the township, it would be really powerful if you also asked for more extensive geological testing, maybe,
Well, you're doing that in your note.
right?
What I would like to see if we could do, with your permission as a citizen, if we could piggyback and copy with our email of this that we're going to be sending to the DEP to say, also please find attached additional comments submitted from one of our residents that you will see separately, but that we are also supportive of. I think that's a reasonable thing, but I don't share that with my board and members and see what your thoughts
That's
are.
fine, and I've been thinking about it the last couple of days too. I'm happy to submit my comments to you and have you all submit them, with your support as well. I don't have to submit them myself, that's fine, that's okay with me too.
Well,
I can,
if you submit them to us, I wouldn't be, you discussed this with the task force, going back and forth. I wasn't able to stay for the whole meeting, so I missed some of the content. But if we can submit those comments to supplement this on behalf of the township, and not just in support of the pipeline task force, but from the pipeline task force, I think it may get more, it likely will get more attention from a political subdivision rather than an individual citizen. I'm just guessing, that may not be a fair comment.
I agree.
What do you think, Rick? And in your experience, is that something that would help us get more action?
We can include Christina's comments. I think the DEP has to look at all these comments, and they do have to, I believe they end up addressing them at some point for summarizing. So we can include them. We can add hers to our list, or we can, as coming from the board, or you can add Christina's to our list as coming from the resident.
Could we have
I don't know if the task, I don't believe the task force approved sending comments. I was a little confused on exactly what they did that meeting.
So the task force asked that I share with them, that I write up a summary of what I had found in my research and what I was planning to submit, because this is so complex. This particular one had a lot of geology in there, more so I think than some of the other ones. And because I had been spending so much time reading on this, they needed some guideposts and some direction. And so I said, I'm happy to share the comments that I'm planning to submit with everybody. I did that on Saturday. I sent that out just to give them some sort of direction in how to understand and comprehend and process all of this information that was in there. I told them that they should most certainly write their own comments, but that this will help them better understand it, because you really did have to read it 2-3 times before you really started to understand what was kind of, the most important parts and coming to the surface.
Well,
Mike, can we have a
Yeah.
motion?
First I'd like to comment to say, your write-up, Christina, is extensive, and whether or not some key points can be extracted to put those up front in the memo to piggyback directly that Rick has put together, so they are not lost in the full report. Whether that may or may not be helpful, I would leave it to you two. But I would say that my motion would be for the Board of Supervisors to accept the comments of the pipeline task force as submitted by Christina Morley, and to add those comments with the draft material that was put together by the township manager to submit to the DEP for their consideration, and meeting the October 4th deadline for comment.
Question, does that mean having Christina's comments separate from ours, attached but separate, or included in the?
I would like to have the comments submitted as from the township through the pipeline task force, prepared by Christina, but representing the task force who has recommended to us that this is an important comment to include.
Wait a minute, I think we gotta recall what's the charge and the manner in which the task force goes about doing business. And I realize there's an urgency associated with it. So, but this, they themselves can't do anything. Their board recommends, I can't get this one. Their board recommends to us a course of action. Now, in this particular case, I think Ricky has taken a look at that and prescribed a couple of alternative solutions to what they consider for stopping these inadvertent returns. And Christine's going a little bit further into some of the background that I think you did, right?
Well,
your task force hasn't seen what you had written at it.
They have, yes, they did. I shared it with everybody. But the public comment is on the Eldridge HDD reevaluation report. It's not just on stopping the inadvertent returns. So everybody gets to comment, the whole public gets to comment on the HDD reevaluation report. And so that's why this report that I put together actually takes it section by section and addresses and comments on that report section by section, because there are issues with that whole report.
My personal feeling is that the township should stick with, possibly tweaking the letter that Rick has put together and have yours piggyback on it. In other words, submit them together, but as separate documents, because your focus was slightly different, your detail was different, and I think they both have value. And if we try to combine them, we might lose the strength.
I would accept if you will, a friendly amendment to the motion, but I would prefer with Christina's okay as a member of the task force that these comments be submitted on behalf of the task force as a body, an advisory body to the board.
Did they vote on it?
No, I don't believe they did, but you shared it with them after you had discussed it with them, shared your comments, and then Judy is here as a member of the pipeline task force. Did you have any thoughts about it, Judy? If I don't know whether you had a chance to see them.
I had some. You have to go up so we can hear you.
I hadn't had a chance to take a really close look at them, but I know that Christina's done a lot of research on this and digging. I know one of the things I noticed in looking at the documentation was that, when Sunoco went to drill the, samples, the homeowners or a neighbor chased them off the
I
property
saw that.
because, I mean, and I feel that the land agent did a very poor job because they really should have told the homeowner, you know, hey, in the next couple of days, someone's gonna be looking to take samples and, you know, be prepared and, you know, to make sure it's on their property and get, you know, the, okay. I don't know that they need the okay if they have the easement, but just to keep people in the loop and have transparency. And I was kind of very disappointed with the lack of transparency with Sunoco because, I mean, how much does it take to knock on someone's door and say, hey, in a couple of days, we're gonna be coming by and we're gonna be doing this and, you know, be prepared in that way. If it's not on their property, they can get the right person involved.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that comment. I respect, the process of, having a formal motion to accept it, but when you have a task force and one or two members have been identified to do particular review for the task force, and they've come up, and now we have the exigency of the deadline here. I just think that coming from the township and the task force would be more effective without bastardizing the process, if you will. I think it's still an effective way.
Also,
I'm wrapped up in the technical side of this. Was there a quorum?
They did not vote on it.
Yeah, there was a quorum, I don't think there was a formal.
There wasn't
a vote.
There was
Not a formal
There was
vote.
sort of a direct, it sounds like
If there's not a
directions.
quorum, there's not a vote, then I think it's appropriate, the only way it's appropriate to make, for me, is if we attach it to what we decided, that we see, assuming we agree with what Rick wrote, and indicate clearly that it's comments that were being submitted on behalf of a resident.
Who was a member of the task force?
That's what it
Who is a
is.
Who was a member of the
That's
pipeline?
fine. If I have the permission to state in my comments that I am a member of the East Ocean Task Force and I have the support of the task force, the support of the board in submitting these, then I'm happy to just submit them on my own and go with
I
that.
can't do that for because I haven't even read it, and I have no idea.
Okay, well, I will withdraw my motion if somebody else wants to make, do you want to make a revised motion?
I can't sign something off on something.
That's fine. If I can I just state that I'm a member of the East Ocean Task Force?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Fine.
Because
I'm
you
fine
want-
with that.
Okay.
My document is strong enough to stand on its own.
All right, Christina. I'll withdraw my motion and see if someone else wants to make one.
Do you want to make a motion?
Well,
Just this. This one. Okay, I move that we authorize the township manager to submit the attached email to DEP with the understanding that Christina Morley is going to send her work independently.
As a member of
As a
the
member.
task force.
Stating that I'm a member.
Member of the East Goshen Township Task Force.
I will second that.
that's okay. I don't want to vote just yet. I don't see, it was, Christina, I think it would be more helpful, more impactful if you attached, so we attach what you have written as a member of the task force to what we sent, as opposed to an independent. Because I think we've had some conversations with them before, correct?
I have?
No, I'm asking a question.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question? I didn't hear you.
Have you had conversations with DEP on this matter before?
I have had conversations with one person at DEP regarding Strasburg Bow Tree. Yes, and
I just
Somewhat,
think
yes.
that I'm not sure how they receive individual comments from residents as opposed to township or larger organizations. It just seems to me, if you put a lot of work into it, it'd be more effective to tag it along with what we're doing, recognizing that your comments and remember this, I'm not suggesting.
That's what I thought we were doing.
I
That's
think
what I thought
that's
the motion was.
No, the motion is that we submit, Rick's
Email
comments
and
with
attach
the
with it.
understanding that Christina will submit them separately and indicate that she's a member of the township.
Task
Task Force. But they would be separate, the motion was they would be separate.
Separate.
I'm saying I think it's more impactful to, if it tags along with ours.
That's what I think.
But
Well,
that's
I
up to
think,
you.
that's what I thought too, but Marty said that he hasn't read them, so.
If I may, if we take with motion Janet, maybe, with the caveat that I will include a copy of the comments submitted by Christina Morley, a member of East Coast Township Pipeline Task Force. For your
I accept
consideration.
that.
That way, everything's coming from me,
Everything will
Christina.
come from
Christina's comments coming from the township, knowing she's a member of the task force, and then what Christina submits on her own will also get there.
So basically, Christina's comments will come to be submitted.
They'll be included with
Yes.
mine.
Yes.
And you can do it on your own too.
But noted they're coming from Christina Morley, who's a member of the Pipeline Task Force.
Okay, so mine are being submitted twice.
You submit them, and then we're gonna submit them with ours, with you represented as a member of the task force, so we make sure we piggyback and get them included.
There's no repetition works
Okay.
well.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm happy with that. Is there any other comment?
Yes, democracy is filled with redundancy.
Okay. Anything from the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Got it. Okay, and then I know that this is not the same topic, but I do just want to put it on the board's radar that we still need to either as part of a meeting or separately, or if somebody, maybe Mike wants to come to the pipeline task force, I still want to address the issue that Strasburg Bow Tree has completely fallen off of this map. It's a big deal.
Yeah. But
It's a very big deal.
the Strasburg, back up, the Strasburg one, which was the one I went from Bow Tree Drive to Matlack. That was one run. And then there was a separate run that went from Matlack to the Catholic Church. Both of those have been combined in what I think they now refer to as, I think it's 521. So they've combined two runs and now they're into one. That's the, I think that's the disconnect.
So, Rick, do you want to explain to me when that happened and how and why?
When Otis started, they started at Matlack and started drilling through Bow Tree. And as a result of that, for whatever reason, they never finished. The job got shut down. Otis left and they brought in Michaels. Michaels reevaluated everything and concluded that they would be better served going directly from Bow Tree to the Catholic Church parking lot, because the Matlack site wasn't big enough to assemble pipe, whereas the Bow Tree area was. So what they basically did was combine the two runs or two settings into one. So that's where the Strasburg section went away, and what I guess they referred to as the Matlack to Church section went away.
So you're saying that, Rick, from what you're understanding, is because it was a logistical matter that they combined the two, eliminated equipment in the segment in the interior, and then turned it into one remaining site.
Yeah, there will be no drilling in the Matlack site, basically just a storage area.
So here's the problem. Bow Tree, Strasburg, is numbered as 520.
Right.
And the reason why that is a problem and it's on the DEP website is because there were inadvertent returns there. There were two inadvertent returns there.
Yeah.
I have stacks of documents, just like for
that was.
Eldridge. And it was subject to the court settlement.
I don't know when the inadvertent returns come or whether it's subject to or not. I know that there was two inadvertent returns on the Matlack to Bow Tree site. They reported DEP. I also know that subsequent after that, Michaels has combined the two segments and they're currently drilling from Bow Tree to the Catholic Church, and I believe they're drilling both ways.
Okay, so just like everything we read through for Eldridge, because it's posted on the DEP website where there's reevaluation reporting required as part of the clean air settlement, I have the same stack of papers for Strasburg Bow Tree. You can go on the DEP website and you can click on them.
And if I'm not mistaken, DEP ultimately approved the reevaluation report from the Matlack to Bow Tree site.
Okay,
It was
so
approved.
in December, you're saying,
No, it's on that same website. On the same, that they submitted a reevaluation report and that reevaluation report was approved by DEP.
Okay, so let me just take you through it.
Yeah.
Okay, so in January of 2018, Sunoco submitted the reevaluation report just like Eldridge. Okay? You can click on the site, you can print it out, I have it printed out. Same thing, GES reports, just like Eldridge. And it's all labeled 520 Strasburg Bowtree. Then DEP comes back to them and says you need to do more testing, the borings aren't sufficient, you're only looking at the area where the bore sample was taken, it's not showing you anything beyond that one spot right there. Sunoco comes back and says, no, we have more than enough information, don't worry about us, we're good. And then mysteriously in October of last year, they come back, they've had an epiphany, and they say, okay, you're right, we will do more geophysical testing at Strasburg Bowtree number 520. That's October 29th. And then in December, like what Rick is alluding to right now, the DEP approves it for restart drilling. And there's a letter there, December 5th for Bowtree, and they say, okay, you are allowed to restart drilling on 3 conditions. 1, you do more geophysical testing. 2, you employ best practices in terms of inadvertent returns. And 3, I can't remember the third one, but there's a third one. It's listed on the letter. And then that's where the trail goes cold. It ends right there. And then you never see another letter. You never see any follow-up reports. You never see any follow-up geophysical testing results. There's nothing. It just drops off. The last correspondence between anybody is December 5th, 2018. And so I had all of those papers there. That's why I was asking Greminger that night, whatever happened, where are the reports, where's all the stuff? And when I saw this projected up on the screen that night, I actually thought it was a typo. I thought 521 should have been 520. Until I read the letter that describes all the sites, and that's where it says the 2 were combined. But what they combined was a site that was under court-ordered settlement and a site that was not under court-ordered settlement. And you don't just put 2 together and then decide that it's no longer under HDD reevaluation reporting anymore.
Can we take that information and put it in a letter of inquiry to the DEP as to, could you provide an explanation as to what happened here? Can we do that with Christina's help and putting it under township letterhead to find out?
So for the previous 4 days before that meeting, I had been emailing and calling the DEP. Hohenstein, who was the person who was writing back and forth, who was in charge of those reports. And I said, this meeting is coming up. They're asking for 24/7 drilling. All I want to know was that testing ever done? Because the trail goes cold after December 5th.
And you didn't hear back.
And he did write back to me one time, and he said the testing was not done because a later review negated the need for it. And that's all he said. And I said, when was it? Where's the paperwork? When was this review? Show me all the documentation, because it should all be posted on the website. And then I go to the meeting and the site's not even on the map. And then the number's been changed and the name has been changed and the pipe is twice as long as it was before.
And
So
now
there's
I
a whole
understand.
bunch of monkey business going on here.
I understand that evening when we thought you were way off task.
Yeah, I was not way off task.
Well, but I can understand your concern.
But that's why also when I asked Greminger on what day did 520 become 521, that's why he and McGinn started whispering to each other. So if you have some magic information, Rick, about this, I'd love to know it.
I'll be
Because
curious. Having been on the receiving end of these things over the years, the simplest thing to do would be to file a right to know request for DEP to go see the file, the complete file related to this run. And they are obligated to provide you all that information. It's all publicly available, which I can't imagine anything secret there. Should be in that file.
And then we see what the response is.
In other words, you go back to DEP and review and see what's in their file.
So the other thing too is that the letter that was enclosed to all the residents about the 24-hour drilling says that the two sites that were combined were 520 and 530. 530 was Matlack Florist. But what it says, when it describes it in the text, is that it says just what you said, up to the school. And so that's actually 3 sites. That's Bowtree Strasburg, that's Matlack, and that's the school.
There is no Bowtree. They refer to the Bowtree Strasburg includes the run from Bowtree Drive to Matlack Florist. There is no run that goes from Bowtree Drive and stops at Strasburg Road.
Okay, so
And the challenge is that their terminology is different from ours, and it depends on where the drill's sitting, because they don't differentiate on whether the drill's on one end or the other. But there was 2 sites that were combined.
So that's why in my first comment, I'm asking the DEP for a master list of all active sites, their HDD number, and their status as to whether or not they are subject to court reporting under the settlement.
Well, as my understanding is that the ones that are on the website, on the evaluation table on the website, are the ones that are currently on the list. But that list only includes the ones that they've submitted the reevaluation report for. Because they haven't got submitted, in other words, I don't believe, there may be a list of how all the possible sites that has all the possible sites that would require a reevaluation report as of today. But there's always a possibility they could encounter, that list could be added to if during one of these current boards, they have 2 inadvertent returns, now they have to come back and do another one.
So do you know what the HDD number is for St. Simon and Jude?
521. If you're referring to the Bowtree to St. Simon and Jude, that's one site. If you're referring from the St. Simon and Jude to the Duffer's Yard, that's another number. The segment that they're referring to is not a specific site, it's a segment between point A and point B. And each segment has a starting point and ending point.
So the letter that they said was Bowtree, Strasburg, and Matlack, and 520 and 530 were combined to make up 521.
And that goes from Bowtree to the Catholic Church or the school. And I believe the Catholic Church down to Duffers, I believe that's 620 or something. That's a 600, but that's not my township, so.
So 530 was,
I believe that was Matlack to the Catholic Church.
30? You mean Bowtree?
No, Matlack.
Matlack to the Catholic.
Remember, they eliminated the Matlack. They eliminated it and combined 2 segments.
I can tell you for sure, there's nothing in Matlack.
right, there's nothing there.
There's nothing.
Oh, yeah.
I was there today.
So that's why I'm saying you can't take a site that's under court settlement and a vacant lot and combine them and then decide that it's not subject to reporting anymore. You just,
Again,
can't
my
do that.
suggestion would be to go back to DP and then basically ask for a file review. And I've done it. You get down there and basically you sit in the room, you can take a camera, take all the notes you want, and they sell you copies. The guy watches you while you review it, and then you can make all figure out what's going on.
Why don't we do that? We should do that. I mean, that's.
we should do that. And the reason why I think that we should do that is because the same pattern of,
I'll go down. I'll file a request go down to DP.
the same pattern of the DEP asking for more extensive testing and then Sunoco agreeing to it and then it not being done happened at Middletown Valley Road where the sinkhole happened. And then,
Alright,
So.
Rick
said he would
do it, so-
I'll go to DP and see what I can find out.
Christina, you're,
I would love to go with you, Rick.
that would be great if you could do it. I think that'd be terrific.
Maybe you guys can do that, file a right to know, anybody can file a right to know. There's no,
Anyway, yeah.
we don't have any more authority under the sunshine law, right to know law, than a private citizen.
We can.
So it's.
We won't be able to say anything more that Christina can say.
If you'd like to do it rather than have the township do it,
Well,
You know, I mean,
Rick's familiar with
yeah.
that.
Yeah, he's
Your
familiar.
tenacity for accountability is valuable, and I think if you've got something here that you wanna feel, more comfortable with, or call them on something that wasn't done properly, I think that's a reasonable thing to, we have so little that we can do, and you're investing a lot in this. I think if Rick is able and has the time, and you guys can do that, I think it would be worthwhile to see what we find.
Well, I think, Mike, it's one thing to find, it's another thing to know what you're hunting for. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? I don't know that, I'm not that familiar, I'm familiar with what you're talking about, but not.
Well, you know what, Marty, it's not unlike what we just went through with the motion, it's process. If you wanna do the process properly and hold people accountable for what they're representing, they're doing or not doing, sometimes it takes watchdogs to find those things out, and it's tedious, and it may not be productive to cure the cracks in the world, but at least you hold individuals accountable for what they say they're representing that they're doing, and remove some of the matters of, who's scratching who's back here, or is it just too much stuff and for DEP and it's an inconvenience, so they just gloss over because nobody's looking. Well, Christina's looking, and I think it's worth looking at the process and see if they're being accountable.
Marty, what we're looking for is why Hohenstein and the DEP spent page after page after page saying, you need to do more geological testing, you need to do more geological testing, and then miraculously it never happened. And it was a condition to restart drilling. And then it just never happened.
Thank you, and
Thank you.
I'm glad we have citizens in the community that are keeping us on our toes. Did we have a vote? Did we vote on that motion?
We never voted on the,
Right to know.
no, that was 3-0.
That was 3-0.
I don't know if there's a.
No, you
Okay.
guys are just working on that.
All right, we'll move on then to correspondence. We have a thank you email letter from Sue and Mike Hogan regarding Mark Miller and his department, and it was right on the screen, and they want to give recognition to the excellence in their response for a request for assistance. We have received version 2 of the Westtown East Goshen Police Department draft budget for next year.
And that is one that Rick is providing information on. That was very, very good information, Rick, about the OPED. It has an important relationship to the budget, and it would have been nice if that number would have been 0, but it can't be. It can't be.
It can't be.
No. So Kathy was just she just didn't understand. So I really appreciate you knowing that. Those are important details, because that's real money, and you just can't ignore it.
And this is still preliminary. I think last year we got to version 5 5 or 6 before we finally got a good one.
Yeah. As you know, we're still in arbitration, so there's more to come with the budget anyway.
Okay. We've received an independent auditor's report for the Westtown East Goshen 2018 for the police. And no problems that I could see.
No. And it does refer to the OPED in there as well.
Yeah.
Reference to it.
And last, this was not in the printed agenda. It came too late. We've been working with East Whiteland Township on the 352 King Road intersection, and we finally received a response from PennDOT regarding our joint request for evaluation. And I'm just going to acknowledge it. It just came today. We have not had a chance to review it as yet.
Is there a gist that you picked up already, Rick? If you
Uh,
read it?
Yeah.
The short, yeah,
I heard
Oh,
it.
yeah.
the short story is, we have requested the possibility of allowing each leg of the intersection to have its own phase. And the other question was, could we install some advanced detection equipment at the intersection, to help improve it? They rejected the idea, said no to the no for each phase. However, they did suggest that we could change the split phasing. Currently, King Road is split, 352 both combined. But they suggest we could change the split phasing, so split phase King 352, so that would eliminate the interlocking left turns. And have King Road then go concurrently. But westbound King Road, because they have a separate left turn lane, they would then get a green arrow. So you wouldn't get 4 legs, you get like 3.5. But that change was also conditioned upon, if you wanted to do that time, you had to and all this work would be done with the existing pavement, but eliminate the island on King Road, slide the traffic lanes a little closer to the south to improve the sight distance, cut back some vegetation.
In other words, it wouldn't be free.
Yeah, but it was in the manageable number. But the bigger sticking point is for both sides.
Right.
No, for both sides.
Yeah.
But the sticking point was that from their perspective, that this was only a Band-Aid, they would only do it as a temporary measure, but they would want agreement from both townships there, they would proceed with doing the traditional full-fledged intersection project.
So we,
So
as I said,
anyway, so I think right now, suggest that we acknowledge that we received it, we need to think about this and
Yeah.
money, et cetera, go from there.
Will we,
This same letter went to East Whiteland.
Those of us
So
got the same letter.
I know, when you talk to John,
I've talked to John, they will acknowledge receipt of it at their meeting tomorrow night, and we'll have to figure out where we go.
you understand what split phasing means with the traffic signal? Okay, one gives one an opportunity to jump in and so they're both going at the same time. I'm not surprised that PennDOT came back with that. Okay, well, let's see what East Whiteland does. Let's see where if they lost all their inertia from the meeting we had at Immaculata, where they still got some mocks
Oh,
that they're
yeah.
gonna pursue. All right, thanks.
okay,
The problem is going to be, and we're gonna do it with some conscience. And the expectation is in the long term, you have the intersection fixed. Which we know now would be the conventional way of doing it, because we've already ruled out the runaround. So you could tell, if you don't believe that you're going to fix it, you should tell them you are going to fix it, knowing that you're not going to fix it. And that would probably depend upon a lot of things, not the least of which is, do you have the funds?
money,
exactly.
money.
So,
And also, the other options require taking of people's property, and if you drive past there, the houses are very close to the street, so even a minor taking is a major taking.
And the burden, it really is on
East Whiteland to figure out, to be the lead here, whether or not we end up participating with. I'm not keen on a lot of funding because I don't think we have it. But when we heard all the comments, and it may sound a bit, a bit staid, I suppose, in the comments of the residents who were immediately affected by the traffic signal, the queuing that goes on there now, the backups, versus a complete reconstruction of the intersection, possibly taking strips of land. I think every resident comment we heard was, we can live with the queuing. It doesn't matter to us. That's A to B traffic. They're all commuters. We'll live with it. We don't want the character of our immediate area totally transformed with a new suburban intersection. So, sometimes in Chester County and other places where we've had trails and things that have crossroads that have now eventually been paved, sometimes we live with them. And I'll give you a good example. If you're familiar with the intersection of, is it Providence Road and Strasburg Road, the great four-way stop sign intersection, wonderful intersection. Every time I go through that intersection, no matter what the extent of traffic, 99% of the people get the etiquette of who was there first and you make a turn. The last thing you'd ever want to see is a traffic signal there. And with all that we have going on in Chester County, with what Landscapes 3 says, with the traffic conditions we have now, and knowing that the infrastructure dollars are not available for the really important changes, 202, 926, for us to be put in a burden of changing an intersection that is involved with commuter traffic and the immediate residents don't want it, that's where I have a difficulty in accepting it. But that's just my
We're just
perspective.
going to acknowledge it. We're not going to make any decisions tonight. Could I have a motion?
I'm sorry,
Oh,
one
one
more
more
thing. It says, and this is due to pipeline folks. Just last week, PIMSA announced that they will be releasing new pipeline safety rules, and they have, and they were published in today's issue of the Federal Register. I don't think there's a whole lot there that impacts us, but they implement changes that were mandated back in 2011 and 2016. I'll send a copy out to the,
Effective July 2020.
yeah, but I don't think there's a lot that affects us because it's worse.
Right. Can I have a motion to adjourn
Sure.
then? Second.
Okay, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Rick, thank you. John, thanks. Tom? 1 month? 1 month, it's happening. Something's gonna happen.
The doorbell.
Thank you, sir.